The morning sun cast harsh shadows across the cobblestone square where the weekly auction took place. Vendors hawked their wares from makeshift stalls while buyers moved through the crowd with calculating eyes. This was not a market for ordinary goods. Here in the forgotten district of Nouveau Geneva, people were bought and sold. Like livestock, Captain Jonas Blackwood pushed through the pressing crowd, his weathered hands adjusting the strap of his leather satchel. 42, he carried. Himself with the quiet confidence of a man who had seen too much of the galaxy's darker corners. His dark hair was streaked with premature silver, and deep lines around his green eyes spoke of sleepless nights spent working in his restoration. Workshop Jonas had come to the market, seeking rare components for his latest project, an ancient starship console that required delicate calibration. He specialized in bringing broken things back to life, whether they were machines or sometimes people. His workshop had become a sanctuary for those society had discarded, the auctioneers. Voice boomed across the square, drawing Jonas's attention to the central platform. His stomach tightened as he saw what was being offered. A young woman stood on the raised stage, her hands bound behind her back with energy shackles that glowed a sickly blue. She was clearly of mixed heritage, her skin bearing the distinctive silver markings of the Andorian colonies, while her hair held the deep auburn color, common to Earth settlers. She wore nothing but thin scraps of fabric that barely preserved her modesty. The auctioneer paraded her before the crowd like a prized animal, forcing her to turn so buyers could inspect every inch of her body. Her eyes, a striking violet color, remained fixed on a point somewhere beyond the crowd. She had learned to disappear inside herself. "This specimen is Zara," the auctioneer announced, his voice carrying easily over the murmuring crowd. "Captured from the Outer Rim colonies. She's young, healthy, and has proven quite adaptable to various working conditions. Bidding starts at 500 credits. Jonas felt his jaw clench. He had witnessed such scenes before, but something about this particular woman struck him deeply. Perhaps it was the way she held herself, despite her circumstances, or the defiant tilt of her chin that suggested an unbroken spirit beneath the surface. The bidding began slowly. A few rough-looking miners showed interest, no doubt seeking someone for the dangerous extraction work on the asteroid belts. A well-dressed merchant in expensive robes examined her with the cold calculation of someone evaluating livestock. Bid felt like a knife twisting in Jonas's chest. 800 credits, called out a scarred man with cybernetic implants covering half his face. Jonas recognized the type immediately, a slaver, who would work her to death in the deep space mining operations. Without fully understanding why, Jonas stepped forward. 2,000 credits, he called out, his voice cutting through the crowds. Murmured the auctioneer's eyes lit up with greed. "We have 2,000. Do I hear 2,500? The scarred man glared at Jonas, but eventually shook his head and melted back into the crowd. No one else seemed willing to match such a high bid for what they saw as damaged goods. "Sold to the gentleman in the brown coat," the auctioneer declared with satisfaction. As Jonas approached the platform to complete the transaction, he caught Zara's eyes for the first time. The look she gave him was neither grateful nor fearful, but something far more complex. It was the gaze of someone who had learned not to hope, yet couldn't quite extinguish the flame entirely. The auctioneer handed Jonas the control device for her shackles, along with a data pad containing her registration information. "She's yours now," he said with a predatory smile. "Use her well." Jonas pocketed the device without activating it and approached Zara slowly. "My name is Jonas," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "I'm going to get you out of here." For the first time since he'd noticed her, something shifted in her expression. Confusion, perhaps, or the first stirring of cautious hope. Jonas led Zara through the winding streets of the lower district, moving away from the market's chaos toward the quieter industrial sector. She walked beside him in silence, the energy, shackles still binding her wrists. He had draped his own coat over her shoulders to provide some dignity, but she remained tense and ready to flee at the first sign of deception. His workshop occupied the ground floor of a converted warehouse, its windows covered with metal shutters that filtered the afternoon light into golden strips across the cluttered interior. Workbenches lined the walls, covered with half-assembled devices, circuit boards, and the delicate instruments of his trade. The air smelled of metal polish and the ozone scent of welding equipment. "This is my home," Jonas said, setting his satchel. "On the main workbench? You're safe here." Zara's eyes swept the space with the trained awareness of someone accustomed to mapping escape routes. She noted the reinforced door, the security systems, subtle sensors, and the various tools that could serve as weapons if necessary. Jonas moved to his desk and retrieved a small device from a locked drawer. He said, holding up the electromagnetic key. "May I?" She studied his face for a long moment before extending her bound hands. The shackles fell away with a soft hiss, leaving angry red marks on her wrists. She rubbed the circulation back into her hands while continuing to watch him with wary eyes. "There's a bathroom through that door," Jonas said, pointing to the back of the workshop. "Clean clothes in the cabinet. Take whatever fits. I'll prepare some food while you get settled." Zara moved toward the bathroom, but paused at the threshold. "Why?" she asked, her voice hoarse from the market's dust and her own carefully maintained silence. Jonas looked up from where he was programming the food synthesizer. "'Cause no one deserves to be treated like property. 'Cause I've seen too much cruelty in this galaxy and decided to do something different when I had the chance." She disappeared into the bathroom, and Jonas heard the shower activate. He used the time to prepare a simple meal and set up the guest quarters in his workshop's small apartment section. When she emerged 20 minutes later, she looked transformed. The clothes she had chosen were practical, dark pants and a long-sleeved shirt that covered the worst of the marks left by her captivity. Her auburn hair, now clean, fell in waves around her shoulders. Without the grime and fear of the auction block, Jonas could see that she was perhaps 25, with intelligent eyes and strong features that spoke of inner resilience. "Better?" he asked. She nodded and accepted the plate of food he offered. They ate in comfortable silence, both lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Zara set down her fork and looked directly at him. "I'm not what you think I am," she said quietly. "I don't think you're anything except a person who deserves freedom," Jonas replied. "My mother was Andorian, my father human. The genetic combination created something ... unusual. I can sense electromagnetic fields, detect power sources, feel the flow of energy through circuits. That's why they kept me so long. I was useful for finding hidden technology, locating buried power cores." Jonas set down his own fork, suddenly understanding. "That's how you survived. You made yourself valuable enough to keep alive." "For a while, but my captors grew careless. They thought I was broken, compliant. They didn't realize I was mapping every ship, every facility, learning their weaknesses." Her violet eyes hardened. "I was planning to escape when the auction happened. You complicated things." "I'm sorry," Jonas said, though he wasn't sure he meant it. "Don't be. I might have died in the attempt. This might be better." She looked around his workshop again, this time with different eyes. "You really do restore things?" Jonas nodded. "Machines, mostly. Sometimes artifacts from the old colonies. Things with history that deserve to be preserved." Zara stood and moved to one of his workbenches, her hand hovering over a partially assembled device. "This is a navigational computer from a colonial transport," she said without touching. The quantum matrix is degraded, but the core memory is intact. You could rebuild it." Jonas stared at her in amazement. "You can sense all that just by proximity? It's like hearing voices in another room?" "It's faint but distinct, once you learn to." "Listen," she turned back to him. "If I stay here, I can help you. My abilities, your skills. We could do remarkable work together." The offer hung between them, heavy with possibility. Jonas realized that what had started as a simple act of compassion might become something far more significant. "You can stay. As long as you want," he said finally. "No conditions, no expectations, just ... Why do you want to work together? I'd welcome the partnership." For the first time since he'd met her, Zara smiled. It transformed her entire face, revealing a warmth that her circumstances had forced her to hide. "I'd like that," she said. 3 weeks had passed since Zara had come to live in Jonas's workshop. and their partnership had evolved into something neither had expected. Her electromagnetic sensitivity proved invaluable in their restoration work, while his patient teaching helped her understand the mechanical principles behind the energy patterns she could sense. They worked side by side at the main bench, heads bent over a complex piece of colonial era technology. Zara's fingers traced the air above the device, while Jonas made precise adjustments with his tools. The afternoon light streaming through the shutters caught the silver markings on her arms, making them shimmer like liquid mercury. "There she said softly. "The power coupling is aligned now. I can feel the energy flowing cleanly through the circuits." Jonas activated the device, and ancient holographic displays flickered to life for the first time in decades. They both laughed with the pure joy of bringing something beautiful back from the edge of extinction. "We make a good team," Jonas said, his hand briefly covering hers on the workbench. The casual touch sent an unexpected jolt through both of them. Zara didn't pull away, instead turning her hand palm up to interlock their fingers. The simple contact felt charged with more energy than any of the devices they had been repairing. "Jonas," she said quietly, her voice carrying a note of uncertainty. He looked into her violet eyes and saw his own growing feelings reflected there. Slowly, carefully, he lifted his free hand to cup her cheek. She leaned into the touch, her eyes closing as if savoring the gentleness she had been denied for so long. "I never expected this," she whispered. "Neither did I, but I'm grateful for it." Their first kiss was tentative, a question asked and answered with careful tenderness.
8.
They finally broke apart. Both were breathing unsteadily. "I need you to know," Zara said, her forehead resting against his. "I've never chosen this before. Damn. Every touch, every intimacy in my captivity was forced or bartered for survival. This, with you, ... this is the first time I'm choosing." It felt his heart clench at her words. He understood the magnitude of trust she was offering him. "We'll go as slowly as you need. No pressure, no expectations. Just what feels right to both of us." That evening, they shared a simple dinner by candlelight. The workshop's harsh fluorescence dimmed to create a more intimate atmosphere. They talked about their pasts, their dreams, the strange circumstances that had brought them together. "I used to want revenge," Zara admitted, swirling the wine in her glass. "When I first gained my freedom, all I could think about was making them pay for what they took from me. And now, I think the best revenge is building something beautiful, proving that I'm more than what they tried to make me." She looked across the table at him. "You've helped me remember who I really am." After dinner, they moved to the small sitting area Jonas had created in one corner of the workshop. Zara curled up beside him on the worn sofa, her head on his shoulder. As they watched the city lights twinkle through the shutters, "Tell me about the colony where you grew up," Jonas said, his hand stroking her hair. "Kepler 442b. We called it Haven. It was beautiful, rolling hills covered in silver grass that sang in the wind. My parents had a small farm where they grew hybrid crops that could thrive in the alien soil." Her voice grew soft with memory. "I was happy there before the raiders came." Jonas pressed a gentle kiss to the top of her head. "Maybe someday we could go there together, see if anything remains to be restored." "I'd like that," she murmured, then lifted her head to look at him. "What about you? Where did you learn to fix broken things?" "From my grandfather. He was a ship's engineer who settled on Mars after his military service. He taught me that everything deserves a chance to serve its purpose, even after it's been damaged." Jonas's thumb traced the silver markings on her arm. "He would have liked you." Their conversation gradually gave way to comfortable silence, both lost in the warmth of simply being close to another person who understood them. When Zara finally dozed against his shoulder, Jonas carried her gently to the guest room they had converted into her private space. As he tucked the blankets around her sleeping form, she stirred and caught his hand. "Stay," she whispered, "just until I fall asleep." He sat on the edge of the bed, holding her hand in the darkness, listening to her breathing slow and deepen. For the first time in years, Jonas felt complete. Whatever dangers lay ahead, they would face them together in the morning. They would discover that their peaceful interlude was about to be shattered by enemies from Zara's past, but for now, In the quiet sanctuary of the workshop, they had found something precious and worth protecting. The security alarm's shrill warning shattered the pre-dawn quiet of the workshop. Jonas bolted upright from where he had dozed in the chair beside Zara's bed, immediately alert from years of military conditioning. Zara was already awake, her enhanced senses having detected the approaching danger before the electronic systems registered it. "How many?" Jonas asked tersely, moving to the window and peering through the shutters. "3 vehicles. Maybe 12 people total," Zara replied, her voice steady, despite the fear he could see in her eyes. "They found me." Jonas's jaw tightened as he recognized the sleek black hovercar settling into position around his building. Corporate security forces, probably working for whoever had originally owned Zara's contract. They would have legal documentation, official warrants, and no compunctions about killing anyone who stood in their way. "Get dressed. Pack light," he ordered, already moving toward his equipment lockers. "We're leaving now." Zara threw on her clothes while Jonas gathered essential supplies, portable tools, credit chips, weapons, and a small case containing backup drives of their work. The sound of boots on metal stairs echoed through the building as their pursuers began their ascent. "This way," Jonas said, leading her toward a hidden panel in the workshop's back wall. Behind it lay a maintenance shaft that connected to the building's old ventilation system. "It leads to the adjacent structure. We can make it to the transport station if we move fast." They crawled through the narrow passage as the sound of splintering wood announced that the security forces had breached the main door. Emergency lighting cast eerie red shadows as they navigated the building's hidden arteries. Jonas leading with Zara close behind. They emerged into the basement of a textile factory, its automated looms creating a cacophony of noise that masked their footsteps. Jonas checked his chronometer. The morning shift would begin soon, providing them with crowd cover if they could reach the street. There he pointed toward a service elevator. "I'll take us to the loading dock." As they waited for the elevator, Zara grabbed his arm. "Jonas, I need you to understand something. These people, they won't stop. As long as I'm alive, they'll keep coming. You could have a normal life if you just walked away." Face her fully, his green eyes fierce with determination. "Do you think I could live with myself if I abandon you now, after everything we've shared?" Before she could respond, the elevator arrived, and they rushed inside. The loading dock was beginning to bustle with early morning deliveries, providing perfect cover for their escape. They slipped out among the workers and made their way toward the public transit station. But their relief was short-lived. As they boarded the maglev transport heading toward the spaceport, Zara spotted familiar faces in the crowd. "They're here," she whispered urgently. Jonas scanned the car and saw them too. 2 men in civilian clothes, whose predatory alertness marked them as professional hunters. Without hesitation, he grabbed Zara's hand and pulled her toward the emergency exit between cars. "When I tell you to jump, don't hesitate," he said as the transport rounded a curve over a residential district. "Jonas will be killed. Trust me." At precisely the right moment, when the transport passed over a large construction site with a deep sand pile, Jonas triggered the emergency release, and they leaped into the void. They hit the sand hard, rolling to distribute the impact, both of them groaning from the jarring landing. "Are you hurt?" Jonas asked, checking Zara for injuries. "Bruised but functional," she replied, accepting his help to stand. "Where do we go now? I have a safe house. Someone who owes me a favor?" He led her through the construction site toward the older part of the district. "But first, we need to talk." They found shelter in an abandoned warehouse, its broken windows letting in shafts of morning sunlight. Jonas pulled Zara into his arms, both of them still shaking from their narrow escape. "I thought I was going to lose you," he said roughly, holding her tight against his chest. "You still might," she replied, but her arms came up to circle his neck. "This isn't over. It may never be over. And we'll face it together. All of it." His hands tangled in her hair as he looked down at her. "I love you, Zara. Whatever happens. I need you to know that." Her breath caught at his words. "I love you too. Didn't think I was capable of it anymore. But you brought me back to life in every way that matters." Their kiss was desperate this time, charged with the knowledge that they might have very little time left together. Hands roamed and clothing loosened as they sought to express in touch what words couldn't adequately convey. They made love there in the dusty sanctuary of the abandoned warehouse, surrounded by the detritus of forgotten dreams, but creating something precious and enduring between them. Afterward, they lay entwined in Jonas's coat, watching dust motes dance in the sunbeams while their hearts gradually returned to normal rhythm. "No regrets?" Jonas asked softly. "Only that we didn't have more time before this started," Zara replied, tracing patterns on his bare chest. "But I'm grateful for what we have." Outside, the city continued its daily routine, unaware that two hearts had just committed themselves to facing whatever storm lay ahead together. The safe house belonged to an old friend of Jonas's from his military days, a gruff ex-sergeant named Tobias, who ran a small shipping operation from a converted cargo container on the outskirts of the city. When they arrived, dusty and exhausted, from their escape, Tobias took one look at their condition and ushered them inside without questions. Corporate security swept through the district an hour ago, Tobias informed them as he poured strong coffee from a battered pot. "They're offering a substantial reward for information about your whereabouts." Zara slumped in her chair, the weight of their situation finally catching up with her. They'll never stop. Even if we run to the outer rim, even if we change our identities, my abilities make me too valuable in Jonas. They'll kill him just for helping me. It's not necessarily, Tobias said, studying them both with calculating eyes. There might be another way. Risky, but it could work. Jonas leaned forward. "What do you have in mind?" "The Andorian trade delegation arrives tomorrow for the annual commerce summit. They have diplomatic immunity, and more importantly, they've been vocal critics of the human trafficking trade. If you could get Zara to their embassy, they might grant her sanctuary." "And then what?" Zara asked. "I hide behind diplomatic protection for the rest of my life." "Not hide. Fight back. The Andorians have been building a case against the trafficking networks for years. Your testimony, combined with your inside knowledge of their operations, could bring down the entire system." Hope flickered in Zara's violet eyes for the first time since their flight began. "It could work, but the embassy is in the high-security zone. How do we get past the corporate forces between here and there?" Tobias grinned, the expression transforming his weathered features. "That's where I come in. I've got a shipment of medical supplies scheduled for the embassy tomorrow morning. Diplomatic cargo doesn't get inspected." They spent the rest of the day planning their approach and preparing for what might be their final gambit. As evening fell, Jonas and Zara found themselves alone on the container's small observation deck, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. "After tomorrow, everything changes," Zara said quietly. "If this works, if the Andorians accept my case, I might have to leave Earth. The trial could take years." Jonas took her hand in both of his. "Then I'll wait, however long it takes. You shouldn't have to put your life on hold for me. Zara, look at me." He turned her to face him fully. "You didn't just save my career or give me a business partner. You gave me a reason to believe in something bigger than just fixing broken machines. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Distance doesn't change that." Tears glistened in her eyes. "How did I get so lucky to find you in that awful place?" "Maybe luck had nothing to do with it. Maybe we were supposed to find each other." They made love that night with passionate intensity, knowing it might be their last time together for a very long while. Every touch was memorized, every whispered endearment treasured against an uncertain future. Morning came too soon. They loaded into Tobias's cargo transport before dawn, Zara hidden among the medical supplies, while Jonas rode in the cab with his friend. The journey through the city felt endless, every checkpoint a potential disaster, every delay a possible betrayal. But their luck held. The diplomatic credentials and Tobias's reputation got them through the security cordons without incident. When they finally pulled up to the Andorian embassy's service entrance, Jonas felt his heart hammering against his ribs. The embassy staff were expecting them. Ambassador Selena, a dignified Andorian woman with the characteristic blue skin and white hair of her species, greeted Zara personally as they transferred her from the transport to the embassy grounds. "You will be safe here," the ambassador assured her. "We have been waiting for someone like you, someone with the knowledge and courage to help us end this terrible trade." Zara turned back to Jonas, who stood at the boundary line he could not cross. The distance between them felt like a chasm. "I'll find a way back to you," she promised, her voice breaking. "I know you will, and I'll be waiting." They couldn't touch, couldn't kiss goodbye, but their eyes held all the love and determination that words couldn't express. Then the embassy doors closed, and Zara was gone. 6 months later, Jonas received an encrypted message through diplomatic channels. The trials had begun, the trafficking networks were crumbling under Andorian pressure, and Zara was safe. More importantly, she would be allowed to return to Earth as a protected witness once the legal proceedings concluded. Jonas smiled as he read her words of love and hope, then returned to his workbench, where a new project waited: a wedding ring. Forged from metals recovered from the Andorian colonies, a symbol of promises kept and dreams restored. Some things once truly fixed stayed that way forever. The workshop hummed with quiet purpose as he worked, preparing for the day when the most precious thing he had ever restored would come home to him.